Okay, inshallah, brother. We are on.
إن الله وملائكته يصلون على النبي يا أيها الذين آمنوا صلوا عليه وسلموا تسليما اللهم صل على محمد وعلى محمد وعجل فرجه أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم يسبح لله ما في السماوات وما في الأرض يسبح لله ما في السماوات وما في الأرض الملك القدوس ملك القدوس العزيز الحكيم هو الذي بعث في الأميين رسولا منهم يتلو عليهم آياته ويزكيهم ويعلمهم الكتاب والحكمة وإن كانوا من قبل لفي ضلال مبين وآخرين منهم لما يلحقوا بهم وهو العزيز الحكيم ذلك فضل الله يؤتيه من يشاء ذلك فضل الله يؤتيه من يشاء والله ذو الفضل العظيم صدق الله العلي العظيم اللهم صل على محمد وعلى محمد وعجل فرجهم. These ayat, the first 4 ayat from Surah Mubarakah Jum'ah. Once again, we have gathered together in the Majlis Ahl Bayt tonight, especially for Shahadat of Imam Musa Kazim. We are commemorating and saying Tasliyat to Imam al-Zamanana for Shahadat Imam Haftum, the 7th Imam, Imam Musa bin Ja'far al-Kazim, and saying Tasliyat to Imam al-Zaman. In the eve of Friday, on the sunset of Maghrib of Ruz al-Jum'ah, the ayah Qibat, Allahumma arrisni binafsik, فإنك أن لم تعرفني بنفسك لم يعرف نبيك اللهم أرثني رسولك فإنك أن لم تعرفني رسولك لم يعرف حجتك اللهم أرثني حجتك فإنك أن لم تعرفني حجتك زللت عن ديني. We ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to keep us from our own nafs and introduce us to Rasul Akram, to Nabi. And if we don't recognize our Rasul, then we don't know our Hujjah. And if we don't know our hujjah, we will be in khusran and in loss. So this is the dua that it has come in the famous books like Rahal al-Anbar as Dua Ghaibat. And especially on the sunset of Friday, we have passed another Friday without our hujjah, without our Imam Zamanina. And before we start the majlis, Surah Fajr, ayah number 89. يا أيتها النفس المطمئنة ارجعي إلى ربك راضية مرضية فادخلي في عبادي وادخلي جنتي. And we see again the occasion of the Shahadat of Imam Musa ibn Ja'far. It's Masumin, each that got has found the Shahadat. They came in following their grandfather, Rasul Akram, that in this ayat is Surah Al-Jum'ah, the first ayat. We say Yusabbih Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala who has created the mulk, and then from between us has chosen a Rasul that reads us this ayat so we can turn our nafs and learn from the kitab and hikmah. If we don't get that, then we are in Zalal al-Mubin. So inshallah, with this ayat mubarakah and blessing of Imam Zamanana, we start the Majlis al-Shahadat of Imam Musa ibn Ja'far and ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to forgive our sins and help us and bless us with his blessing and allow us to benefit from the Majlis Ahlul Bayt. Barakatuh Muhammad wa ala Muhammad. Allahumma salli ala Muhammad wa ala Muhammad wa ajil farajah.
Bar Muhammad wa ali Muhammad salawat. Allahumma salli ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. The salam and mercy that I have tonight describes the separation of Imam Hussein alayhi salam from his daughter Hazrat Fatima Sughra salamun alayha. And this is the 28th of Rajab, the year 60 Hijrah, when this event takes place. Bar Muhammad wa ali Muhammad salawat. Allahumma salli ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. घर को छोड़ा शाह ने जंगल बसाने के लिए करबला में आए थे जन्नत में जाने के लिए जोहर को ज़ैनब से जा मिलने गए घर में हुसैन कोई जोड़ी पर न था पर्दा उठा कोई जोड़ी पर न था पर्दा उठा शय उठे पढ़कर नमाज़े सुबह महशर हो गया हजरते ज़ैनब चली कपड़े पिना कहती थी माँ खत मेरे अकबर को था पैगाम मार्ग ये जवानी आई थी गोया बुला ये जवानी आई थी गोया बुला थी सदा ज़हरा की ज़ैनब मर गया तेरा हुसैन घर में जा बैठी सफ़े मातम बिछा घर में जा बैठी सफ़े मातम बिछाने के लिए घर को छोड़ा शाह ने दश्ते गुर्बत में वतन से शहीदी जाते हैं साथ सब गुंचा दहन माह जबी जाते हैं गुल है कनाने इमामत के हंसी जाते हैं, खाक होने के लिए अर्श नशी जाते हैं। गुलशने बादशाह किला शिकन लुटता है, जिसमें जन्नत की फिजा थी वो चमन लुटता है, जिसमें जन्नत की फिजा थी वो चमन लुटता है। हरमे शय में है फरियादो बुका से कोहरा, बीबियां आई है रुखसत को महल्ले की तमाम, सबसे मिलती है गले रो रो के हमशीरे इमाम, हाथ मल मल के ये हमसाया करती है कलाम। क्या कयामत है के वीरा ये घर करते हैं, हाँ इस गर्मी में शब्बीर सफर करते हैं, हाँ इस गर्मी में शब्बीर सफर करते हैं। जिक्र ये था कि शहे यसरबो बता आए, घर में मगमूम व हजी सैयदे वाला आए, कहा मादर से सकीना ने के बाबा आए, बोली बीमार के हाँ मेरे मसीहा आए। शह ने ज़ैनब से कहा और कलक बढ़ता है, आओ सुगरा से भी रुखसत हो के दिन चढ़ता है, आओ सुगरा से भी रुखसत हो के दिन चढ़ता है। कह के ये आए करी फातिमा सुगरा के इमाम, कांपते हाथों से बेटी ने किया उठ के सलाम, बोले छाती से लगा कर ये शह अर्श मकाम, बैठो बैठो के बदन ज़ौफ से लर्जा है तमाम, जो मुकद्दर में है वो रंज नहीं टलता है, तब से तुम जलती हो गम से मेरा दिल जलता है, तब से तुम जलती हो गम से मेरा दिल जलता है। कह के ये बैठ गए पास इमाम दो सरा, बाद अलहम्द पढ़ी आपने सेहत की दुआ, और बीमार को छाती से लगा कर ये कहा बेटी तुम घर में रहो है यही मर्जी है खुदा, साथ लेते जो तवाना तुम्हें पाते बीबी, ऐसे बीमार सफर में नहीं जाते बीबी, ऐसे बीमार सफर में नहीं जाते बीबी। ना जिएगी ना जिएगी ये मरीज़े रंजूर, हाय मैं घर में रहूं और हूँ सबसे दूर, छोड़ दे बेटी को बाबा ये नया है दस्तूर, अफ कीजिए कोई सुगरा से हुआ हो जो खुसूर, आतिशे रंजो अलम से ना जलूंगी बाबा, कुछ हो मैं आपके हमरा चलूंगी बाबा, कुछ हो मैं आपके हमरा चलूंगी बाबा, हाथ मैं जोड़ती हूँ अब मेरे अच्छे बाबा, पांव पर गिरती हूँ मैं मुझको ना छोड़ो तन्हा, रहम कीजिए मेरी मिन्नत पे ये लौंडी हो फिदा, मेरी बीमारी का हजरत को अगर है धड़का, अच्छी मैं हो लूं तो यहाँ हो यहाँ से रवाना बाबा, या मैं दुनिया से गुजर जाऊं तो जाना बाबा, या मैं दुनिया से गुजर जाऊं तो जाना बाबा। बातें सुगरा किए सुनते थे शह कौनो मका, आए जो इतने में हम शक्ल रसूले दो जहां, देख कर भाई को बोली वो बसद आओ फुगा, आओ भैया अली अकबर मैं तुम्हारे कुर्बा, अपना कुछ बस नहीं बाबा तो हमें छोड़ चले, तुम भी क्या खाहिर नाशाद से मुंह मोड़ चले, तुम भी क्या खाहिर नाशाद से मुंह मोड़ चले, हम तो मेहमान कोई जिनके है जाओ भाई, अब यकीन है कि हमें आके ना पाओ भाई, बूझे जुल्फे सुमन बू की सुंघाओ भाई, लो बलाए मैं जरा पास तो आओ भाई, लो बलाए मैं जरा पास तो आओ भाई, अलमे हिजर में दुनिया से सफर करते हैं, कोई हसरत तो न रह जाए कि हम मरते हैं, कोई हसरत तो न रह जाए कि हम मरते हैं, मेरे आशिक मेरे शायदा मेरे प्यारे भैया, तुम पर इस खस्ता जिगर को कोई वारे भैया, मुझसे अब छुट्टे हो सदक़े मैं तुम्हारे भैया, तुम चले और है बहन गोर कनारे भैया, पहले तुरबत पर मेरी अश्क बहाते न गए, कब्र बीमार की असरफ में बनाते न गए, कब्र बीमार की असरफ में बनाते न गए, देखिए खैर से इस शहर में कब आओगे भाई, फिर चांद सी सूरत हमें दिखलाओगे, अपनी शादी में भी नाशाद को बुलवाओगे, देर से आए तो बहना को ना फिर पाओगे, ये वसीयत है कि तुम घर में ना जाना पहले, सहरा लटकाए मेरी खबर पाना पहले, सहरा लटकाए मेरी खबर पाना पहले, सलवात अल्लाहुम्मा सल्ली अला मुहम्मद व आले मुहम्मद।
Assalamu alaikum, brother Kirmani. Inshallah, you can start whenever you're ready.
وعليكم السلام ورحمة الله وبركاته. سورة المباركة الفاتحة. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. الحمد لله رب العالمين الرحمن الرحيم مالك اهدنا الصراط المستقيم صراط الذين أنعمت عليهم غير المغضوب عليهم ولا الضالين. أعوذ بالله من الشيطان اللعين الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. فوضوا أمري إلى الله إن الله بصير بالعباد ولا حول ولا قوة إلا بالله العلي العظيم. حسبنا الله ونعم الوكيل ونعم المولى ونعم النصير، والصلاة والسلام والتحية والإكرام على الرسول المسدد المصطفى الأمجد المحمود الأحمد الذي سمي في السماء بأحمد وفي الأرض بأبي القاسم محمد. اللهم صل على محمد وعلى أهل بيته الطيبين الطاهرين المعصومين المظلومين المنتجبين الذين أذهب الله عنهم الرجس وطهرهم تطهيرا. اللهم صل على محمد وعلى محمد. وقل رب اشرح لي صدري ويسر لي أمري واحلل عقدة من لساني يفقه قولي. أما بعد، قال الله تبارك وتعالى في كتاب الكريم: بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. الذين ينفقون في السراء والضراء والكاظمين الغيظ والعافين عن الناس والله يحب المحسنين. صدق الله العلي العظيم. My respected elders, brothers and sisters in Iman in Kansas City and across the globe wherever you are hearing my voice, Assalamu alaikum jami'an wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Question: what is the connection between Imam al-Kadhim alayhi salam and Imam al-Hussein alayhi salam? Keep this question in the back of your mind, inshallah. We will return to it. We are told there's a moment in time where our sixth Imam, Imam al-Sadiq alayhi salam, is returning from Hajj. when he is returning from Hajj, he stops at a location called Abwa. When he stops at this location, it is between Mecca and Medina. He's returning from Hajj. Between Mecca and Medina, he stops at Abwa. Expecting at that moment in time, she is expecting a child. When they stop at Abwa, there's a moment where the mother of Imam al-Kadhim alayhi salam goes into a state where she is expecting. And when she is about to go into labor, at that point in time, the news comes to Imam al-Sadiq alayhi salam. The news comes to Imam Ja'far al-Sadiq alayhi salam that he has been blessed by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala with a beautiful baby boy. This young boy is named Musa by the Imam and by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and becomes known as Imam Musa ibn Ja'far al-Kadhim salawatullah wa salamu alayhi. This is an Imam who is so important and so fundamental, yet unfortunately he is mazloom during his lifetime and also after his death. Why? Because given the birth of the Imam, given the era and the moment in time when the Imam was born, 7th of Safar, due to the circumstances that it is typically before Chehlum or the Arba'in of Imam Al-Hussein, we typically don't commemorate to the extent possible the birth of Imam Al-Kadhim alayhi salam. Yet the accomplishments, yet the contribution of this Imam is so immense that 2 majalis are not even sufficient, the Wiladat lecture and the Shahadat lecture. Therefore, in the brief moments that we have together, we have to cover 2 lectures in one. Therefore, I ask that you stay with me, and I will try to cover as much ground as possible in the next about 45 minutes or so that you and I can get a glance of the contribution of this Imam in our lives and what he did to lay the foundation of Tashayyu, to establish and build on what his father did in establishing the Ja'fari school and building on it, so that you and I can call ourselves Ja'fari in this day and era. To understand this, I want to look at a few things. Number one, I want to look at the early part of the life of our 7th Imam so we can understand it. Then I want to look at the aspects of the Imam's movement from Medina towards Baghdad. How did that come about? I then want to look at what were some of the challenges that the Imam faced during his Imamat. In particular, I want to look at what were those different movements that were rising. For example, fiqh, the movement of philosophy or falsafa, the movement of, for example, the Sufis. All of these 3 movements are during the time of our 7th Imam. How did he use this time to establish Shiaism and the Ja'fari school, although much of his time was spent in jail? I then want to look at what is the connection between Imam al-Kadhim alayhi salam and Imam al-Hussein alayhi salam, who we are also commemorating tonight, and his movement, the beginning of his movement towards Karbala. And finally, what was the connection of the musibah of Sayyid al-Shuhada, and how does that revive our hearts wherever we are and in whatever time we belong? This is our agenda for tonight in the brief moments that we have together, inshallah. Wherever you are, in Kansas City or across the globe, wherever you are hearing my voice, from the bottom of your heart, send a salawat on Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. Allahumma salli ala Muhammad wa ali. My dear brothers, as you know, I wish that I was in your company and I wish I was in Kansas City, although I remember the time when I get off in the airport and it feels rather cold, but the warmness of the hearts of the mu'mineen and the believers, they keep you revived, and I miss you, and inshallah, we will see one another. I remember I've told you this before, inshallah, I remind you, I'm of someone who recites in a crowd or in a gathering, and the relationships are very, very important. And how can we cure this isolation that many are feeling? We will discuss this through Imam al-Kadhim. But for now, my dear brothers, who I remember, if I don't remember your names, but I know you still have a place in my heart, Brother Kamran, Kumel, Brother Kashif, all of these brothers, Brother Sohail, who's also close, salams to all of you and salams to the entire community. Nonetheless, we come to Imam al-Kadhim alayhi salam. There's a moment in time, at the age of 3, Imam al-Kadhim alayhi salam, 3 years old, his story begins in terms of the riwayat and the narrations. There's a moment in time, we don't talk about the early part of the Imam enough. There's a moment in time where Imam al-Kadhim is only 3 years old. At this age, there's a man by the name of Safwan al-Jamal. He was a businessman who had a camel business. This Safwan al-Jamal, he is leaving the house of Imam al-Sadiq. Imam al-Sadiq's house many times used to be open. His door used to be open because he had the University of Medina. And he was teaching people left, right, and center. People would come with questions. He says, Safwan says, I left the house of Imam al-Sadiq and I saw a young boy who was playing with a baby goat. And at that point in time, when he was playing with the baby goat, I thought he was just playing like a child. But as I got closer, I noticed that this young boy was speaking to the goat, and he was directing the goat to face in a particular direction. And he was bending the ears of the goat, and he was saying something. As I got closer, I realized that this young boy was teaching this animal how to pray to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And I asked him, "Oh, young man, what is your name?" He said, "My name is Musa." He said, "Son of who?" "Son of Ja'far." "Son of who?" "Son of Muhammad." All the way up until he got to Rasulullah, that I understood that this was the son of the Imam, that this was the son of Imam al-Sadiq, that these are not ordinary children. In fact, when we go further, we realize that the time and the era of the Imam, and this is very pivotal and very important, the task that the Imam had to do and the service that the Imam did for you and I as Shias and the globe at large was he protected Islam against and fortified Shiaism in an era where fiqh is rising, in an era where philosophy is rising, in an era where Sufism is rising, although they are not necessarily bad on their own. But what is the view of Shiism during this time? For example, our brothers in Ahl Sunnah wal Jama'ah, the non-Shia community, they have the scholars known as Abu Hanifa or Hanafi, Maliki, Shafi'i, Hanbali. These are the four schools of fiqh, of jurisprudence, of Islamic law that are found in our brothers in Ahl Sunnah wal Jama'ah. Of course, ours is the fifth, the Ja'fari school. Now, during the era of the seventh Imam is Abu Hanifa, is Imam Malik, is Imam Shafi'i, and Imam Hanbali. All four of these Imam of fiqh are there during the Imams. Now the Imam has to establish and make the basis of Shiaism, Ja'farism solid, although he's in prison much of his life, at least 14 years, if not more. How did he do this? From the age of 5. There's a moment in time where Abu Hanifa, he comes to the house of Imam al-Sadiq. When he comes to the house of Imam al-Sadiq, Imam al-Sadiq is very busy because his doors open, people are coming left, right, and center asking questions. Abu Hanifa believed in predestination. Predestination, if you understand, is qada and qadr, this argument that's very old in Islam. That is everything predestined or is everything free will? Or is it between the two? Of course, from our school of thought, it's clear. And the Imam answered this. But Abu Hanifa believed in predestination, meaning everything is by the jabr of Allah. Allah has already decreed it. Now, if you understand this and remember this, I recite this poem, this share, this couplet very often, never forget it. It says, जिसको भी शेख व शाह ने हुक्म खुदा दिया करार हमने नहीं किया वो काम हाँ बखुदा नहीं किया और निस्बत इल्म है बहुत हाकिम वक्त को अजीज उसने तो कारे जहल भी बे उलमा नहीं किया. I'll translate. The poet says that whatever the sheikh and the shah said together, I never did that. Why? Because they always had ulterior motives, and the connection to ilm was so important for the ruler, for the shah, that he never did the task of ignorance without the sheikh. What does it mean? The idea that the ruling class always used ulama and abused them throughout times to fortify their belief system. And you'll see this extensively used during the time of Imam al-Qadim. So Abu Hanifa was pushing this agenda of predestination, that everything's ordained by Allah. What's the problem with this? Why was this predestination movement put forth? The argument is like this. Allah predestined everything. If Allah predestined everything, that means that the ruler is in power with the knowledge and the predestination of Allah. That means that if you revolt, if you rise, if you speak out, if you go against the ruler, the Khalifa of the time, that means that you are going against the rida and the will of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and therefore you are to be killed. Of course, it makes no sense. It's nonsense. But this is how the belief system was created so that they could justify their rulership. That is, Banu Umayyah, Banu Abbas pushed this agenda very, very heavily. Abu Hanifa believed in this. Abu Hanifa is at the house of Imam al-Sadiq. Imam al-Qadim is 5 years old. So he's not getting anyone to answer his question because the Imam is busy. The sixth Imam is busy. So he sees a 5-year-old. And he's directed to ask him the question at that moment. What's the question? The question is it predestination? Is it free will? Or is it something else? The Imam says there's only 3 scenarios. He says, what is it? He says either it's predestination or free will, or between the two. The Imam said this before Abu Hanifa could even say it. At that point in time, he says the Imam at 5 years old, Imam al-Qadim is saying, if it is free will, then it is against what you're saying. So you're not interested in that argument anyways. So you have no interest in that. Let's leave that for the side. So it's not free will for you. You're not interested in free will. He said, if it is predestination, as you say, Allah has done jabr and everything is forced, then if that's the case, then people should not be punished for what they do. 5-year-old Imam is saying to Abu Hanifa. Then how are people punished? He said, for example, in our world, people say that, for example, everything is the qada and qadar of Allah. Okay, if everything is the qada and qadar of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, if I say, Ya Ali Madad, what's your problem? It's the qada and qadar of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Or if I say, La'ana on Yazid, what's your problem? It's the qada and qadar of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. It doesn't go both ways apparently for them. Nonetheless, I'll leave that on the side. The third level, the Imam says, that means that it's either the only scenario is that it is al-amr bayn al-amrayn. It is the matter between the two matters. That it is, some things are predestined and some things are free will. This Abu Hanifa had just been silenced by a 5-year-old. He had been dismissed his question. And the Imam answered at that young age. According to the riwayat and narrations, Abu Hanifa kept a sort of a grudge against the Imam almost throughout his life. Where do we see this? At the age of 10, we're told there's a moment in time where Imam al-Kadhim is praying. When Imam al-Kadhim is about 10 years old and he's praying salah, Abu Hanifa sees him. When Abu Hanifa sees him praying salah, namaz, he notices that there are people walking by in front of the Imam. You know, today, even if you go to Masjid al-Nabi or if you go to Masjid al-Haram, there are certain people who are praying. If you try to walk in front of them, they'll stick their hand out. Those who have gone to Hajj or Umrah know what I'm talking about. This same issue was going on during the time of the Imam. At that point in time, Abu Hanifa went and complained to Imam al-Sadiq. Your son doesn't know how to pray? That people are walking by in front of him and he's praying as if nothing's the problem, nothing's wrong? At that point in time, we're told that Imam al-Sadiq calls Imam al-Kadhim, who was a young boy. He says, my son, is this the case? He says that Abu Hanifa says that you will let people walk by, people are walking by. Is it a problem, not a problem? What do you say about this? Imam al-Kadhim says, is that the case? He says, Allah is closer to me than my jugular vein. He says, my father, I did not even realize that there were people walking by in front of me. It reminds me of what happened with Ali ibn Abi Talib. When the arrow was in the leg of Ali ibn Abi Talib, they said that when do you remove this arrow? They said the only time to remove the arrow from the leg of Ali ibn Abi Talib is when he is in salah. Because when he is in salah, when he is in namaz, when he is in prayer, Ali ibn Abi Talib is not here. Ali ibn Abi Talib is in the arsh of Allah in terms of his mind. He's connected with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala completely. In fact, when they removed the arrow from the leg of Ali ibn Abi Talib, at that point in time, when after he saw the color on the ground, he said, where did this come from? This is the attention of Ali ibn Abi Talib in salah that we see in his grandson at that young age, Imam al-Kadhim alayhi salam. Nonetheless, another moment, Abu Hanifa, we're told, Abu Hanifa, Imam, as he gets a little older, Abu Hanifa wanted to always try to trip the Imam up. So what happened? He said, what is the ruling? Remember, this is the time of fiqh. This is the time of Islamic laws being established. Abu Hanifa, Malik, Shafi'i, Hanbali, all four are during this time. It's the era of fiqh. So what happens? He says, what is the rule for someone who is a traveler in a strange land and they have nowhere to be and they want to relieve themselves? Their nature calls. What do they do? At that point in time, he thought it's a young boy. What is he going to answer? The Imam categorized all the rules. He says if he is in a foreign land and he does not know where to relieve himself, he should make sure he does it towards rare walls. He should make sure there is no one nearby, even close. He should make sure he is not near any vegetation. He should not be near any fruit-bearing trees. He should not be near the direction, for example, facing the direction of the Kaaba. All of these conditions were outlined by the Imam. At that point in time, we're told, according to the narration, that this Abu Hanifa was spellbound. He had nothing to say. But at the same time, there were other people that I want to remind our brothers and sisters about the commonalities between us and our brothers in Ahl Sunnah. How? For example, during this time was also Imam Shafi'i, Imam Hanbali as well. These are also the Imams of fiqh for our brothers in Ahl Sunnah. Imam Shafi'i, rahmatullahi alayhi, Imam Shafi'i was who? He wrote so many poems in honor of Imam Amir al-Mu'mineen. Maybe he wasn't perfect, but who is? He may have problems, sure. But Imam al-Shafi'i is writing a very poem in honor of Ali. So many poems. For example, لو أن المرتضى يبدي محلة لكان الخلق طرا سجد الله كفى في فضل مولانا علي. And it continues a long qasida in honor of Imam Ali in Arabic. Imam al-Shafi'i says, if Ali had not hid and he'd not hidden his fada'il, what would the world think about Ali? And yet, even though he hid his fada'il, then at that point in time, people still raised him. This is Imam Shafi'i, he's not Shia. This same Imam Shafi'i said that I did not find any of my dua being accepted except by the tomb of Musa al-Kadhim. That when I was in my most difficult circumstance, it was the tawassul to the tomb of Musa al-Kadhim that my dua was accepted. Babul Hawaij, not only for Shias, but for everyone is Imam al-Kadhim alayhi salam. This Imam al-Shafi'i had an enormous respect for Imam al-Kadhim alayhi salam. The same individual, or Abu Hanifa. Pay attention here very closely, my dear brother and sister. You're with me, inshallah? I know I'm going very fast, but I have to cover a lot because otherwise we will not do justice to the Imams. Of course, we cannot do justice, but we can try. At that point in time, we're told that Imam Ahmad bin Hanbal, if you go to the Khalij, for example, the Khalij, which is the Middle East, the belt of these modern developed countries that are in the Middle East, many of them follow the Hanbali school of fiqh, which is the school of Abu Hanifa. Abu Hanifa was very young, maybe 1920, when he started his dars in Medina during the time of Imam al-Kadhim and Imam al-Sada. At the time when Imam al-Kadhim, our Imam who we're commemorating tonight, was martyred, was shaheed, we're told at that point in time, when he was martyred, when he was shaheed, they called all of the Imams, all of the scholars, all of the ulama to bear witness that this Imam has died of natural causes. When this happened, all of them accepted and they took their money and left. This Imam Ahmad ibn Hanbal, when he came, he said, after seeing the body of Imam al-Kadhim, that I will, if you pay me all the money up until the end of my life, I will not bear witness that he has been killed by natural causes, because I have seen the body and from head to toe he is riddled with whiplashes. Allahu Akbar. I'm not at the moment of Mathai, but these were ulama, these were scholars, Imam Ahmad ibn Hanbal, who had integrity, who had justice. Yes, maybe they were not 100% perfect, sure. But at the same time, they had honor and integrity. Remember, Imam Nasa'i, in the books of Hadith, Imam Bukhari, Muslim, Tirmidhi, Ibn Majah, Imam Bukhari and Ibn Majah and all of these, and Nasa'i is one of them. Imam Nasa'i, how did he die? I've told you again, I remind you. Imam Nasa'i wrote a book called Khasa'is Ali Amir al-Mu'mineen, about the Fadail of Ali ibn Abi Talib. When they came to him and said, write a book like this about Muawiyah, he said, I cannot, because Muawiyah doesn't have any merits like this. No companion has merits like Ali ibn Abi Talib. Forget Muawiyah. They beat him until he died. This was a Ahl Sunnah scholar, but he had honesty and integrity in what he did. We invite the Muslim world, look at the history of the scholars and their relationship to Ahlul Bayt, and you will understand the position, inshallah. But this was the era of time of Imam Kadhim. Look, the fuqaha are rising, but also philosophy, Greek, especially Unani philosophy, Greek philosophy, Aristotle, Plato, Socrates, as well as Sufism is rising. The rulers wanted all of these to rise, in particular, all three of these to rise, so that they could establish themselves in strength and they could loosen the rigidity of Islam. They could make Islam more relaxed. They could make Islam not as strict as they wanted it to be. Why? Because people will get busy partying, and people will do this and that, and they won't worry about what the rulers are doing. In that environment, in that circumstance, the Imam lays the groundwork so you and I can follow in those footsteps. Now, the next level of analysis that I want to come in at, my dear brothers and sisters, is this. How did the Imam go from Medina towards Baghdad, Imam al-Kadhim alayhi salam? It's a very good question. You see, this is a lesson for you and I. When Harun was that individual who was the Imam's opponent. He was Harun al-Abbasi. Of course, we don't call him Harun Rashid. Rashid means rightly guided. Of course, if we believed him to be rightly guided, we'd follow him. That's why we do not say Khulafa Rashidun, because we don't believe them to be rightly guided, the first three. And that's why we also don't say Harun al-Rashid. He is Harun al-Abbasi. Why? Because he is from the Abbasid dynasty, but he is not rightly guided by any means. Nonetheless, even in the name, there is a hikmah. Even in the name, there is a wisdom. Why? According to the ulama, why did Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala name Prophet Musa? This is a very important question. Why did Allah name him Musa? You see, this is something that has a divine hikmah. Because Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala had a prophet by the name of Musa, and he had an imam by the name of Musa. And this comes to the ayah that I recited, at the beginning? What ayah did I recite at the beginning? The verse of the Quran al-Majid wal Furqan al-Hamid that I recited at the beginning was verse 134 of Surah Al Imran, Surah number 3, verse 134. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, الَّذِينَ يُنْفِقُونَ فِي السَّرَّاءِ وَالضَّرَّاءِ وَالْكَاظِمِينَ الْغَيْظَ وَالْعَافِينَ عَنِ النَّاسِ وَاللَّهُ يُحِبُّ الْمُحْسِنِينَ. What does he say? Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, and they give, الَّذِينَ يُنْفِقُونَ, they do infaq, they give, الَّذِينَ يُنْفِقُونَ فِي السَّرَّاءِ وَالضَّرَّاءِ, they give in ease and in difficulty, they give in ease and in adversity, they give when they have and they give when they don't have. Allahu Akbar. There are people who are millionaires, multimillionaires, they give when they have. But who are these people? When they don't even have, they give. And it's not even money necessarily. Amir al-Mu'mineen, Ali ibn Abi Talib, is in battle. When he's in battle, he's fighting against the enemy. When he's fighting against the enemy, the opponents, his sword falls to the ground. When his sword falls to the ground, he says, Ya Ali, habli sayfak. Oh Ali, give me your sword. Allahu Akbar. Amir al-Mu'mineen throws his sword towards him. What is this? The ulama have said there are levels. When you have and you give, this is called sakhawa. This is generosity. But when you don't have and you give, this is called karam. And the one who gives when they don't have is called kareem. This is the trait of Ahlul Bayt alayhimus salam. And this is what we see in the personality of the Imams, in particular Imam al-Kadhim. But the ayah doesn't stop there. The verse of the Quran continues. الَّذِينَ يُنْفِقُونَ فِي السَّرَّاءِ وَالضَّرَّاءِ وَالْكَاظِمِينَ الْغَيْظَ, and they control their anger. This is where the name of the Imam comes, the total title. وَالْكَاظِم, Kadhim meaning the one who controls. Controls what? The ayah tells us. كَاظِمِينَ الْغَيْظَ, they control their anger. وَالْعَافِينَ عَنِ النَّاسِ, and they forgive the people. وَاللَّهُ يُحِبُّ الْمُحْسِنِينَ, and Allah loves those who do good. This is the trait, this is the nature of the Imam alayhi salam. But why Musa the Prophet and why Musa the Imam? Ulama have commented on this, and they've said that Allah had made Musa the Prophet as someone who had anger. He was someone who's known for his ghadab. But Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala wanted to counterbalance that and show that that was one Musa, this is another Musa, another representative of mind who is known for controlling his anger. وَالْكَاظِمِينَ الْغَيْظَ وَالْعَافِينَ عَنِ النَّاسِ. That means that if we are a follower of Imam al-Kadhim, we should not be victims of our anger. We should control our anger. And as the ayah continues, we should forgive people. وَالْعَافِينَ عَنِ النَّاسِ وَاللَّهُ يُحِبُّ الْمُحْسِنِينَ, and Allah loves those who do good. Now keep in mind, how did the Imam move from Medina to Baghdad? Do you know who was responsible for this? Harun wanted to find an excuse to move the Imam from Medina to Baghdad. Do you know who he used? He asked around and he said, is there anyone that we can use in order to get them on our side so we can have an excuse to bring Musa ibn Ja'far to Baghdad in Iraq? From Hijaz to Baghdad to in Iraq. He says, how? They found one person. Do you know who they found? Muhammad ibn Ismail. You may not recognize yet. Muhammad ibn Ismail, let me make it clearer. Muhammad ibn Ismail ibn Ja'far as-Sadiq, the son of Imam al-Sadiq by the name of Ismail, his son Muhammad. That means the nephew of Imam al-Kadhim, the direct blood nephew. What happened? Imam al-Kadhim alayhi salam had a brother by the name of Ismail. This was the son of Imam al-Sadiq. This son, he died during the lifetime of Imam al-Sadiq, Ismail. Now what happened was, there was a moment when his son passed away, Ismail ibn Ja'far al-Sadiq. At that point, the Imam removed the cover from his face and he called his companions. And he says, do you see this individual? Do you see my son? Do you see him? He said, yes. He says, bear witness that he has left this world. Therefore, he's not the Imam. And my son Musa ibn Ja'far will be the Imam after me. But there was a group that emerged afterwards that said, no, the line of Ismail continues. And Muhammad ibn Ismail wanted to be the Imam after Imam al-Sadiq alayhi salam. Now, given that circumstance, he had worked it out with Harun to be the reason why the Imam is shifted away towards Baghdad. So he would say the Imam is making a revolution and uprising and we must move him. So what happened? Muhammad ibn Muslim is in Medina, Imam al-Kadhim is in Medina. When they were both in Medina, Imam al-Kadhim would help his nephew out as much as he could. One day Muhammad ibn Muslim comes, he says that he's already decided. He says, my uncle, I'm leaving for Baghdad. He says, why? He said, what happened? He said, I've lost in business. My finances have dipped. I'm not doing well. I'm having a very difficult time. I want to wrap everything up in Medina and go to Baghdad. He said, very well. He said, look, he said, what do you need? He said, I want some money. I want you to give me 10,000 dirham so I can have this and I can go towards Iraq. I can go to Baghdad and establish a business there and live my life there. He says, my dear nephew, Imam Kadhim says, why don't I increase your stipend a little bit? I'll give you a little bit more money, or I'll give you much more money so you can be safe, healthy, stay in Medina. You can stay here, no problem. He says, no, I've made my decision. I want to go to Baghdad. He says a second time, my nephew, I will give you the money, stay in the city, stay in Medina, don't go towards Baghdad. He says, no, I've made my decision. Third time, Imam said, listen, I'm telling you again, stay. I recommend it. Why not? Why don't you stay? I'll give you the income. You can stay here. Inshallah, you'll be taken care of. He says, no, I've made my decision. Imam said, very well. How much do you need? He says, 10,000 dirham. Imam took a bag. It had some wealth in it. He gave it to him, extended it towards Muhammad ibn Muslim, his nephew, and the Imam puts it there. At that point in time, Muhammad ibn Muslim grabs the bag. Imam doesn't let go. He says, Muhammad ibn Muslim, just one thing. Make sure you do not color your hands with my blood. And the Imam lets go. At that point in time, Muhammad ibn Muslim left. At that point in time, the companion said, Yabna Rasulullah, Imam al-Kadhim, we saw you in a different state today. We saw you in a different environment today. We saw you acting in a way that you never act. Whenever someone asks for something, you give them straight away. Why did you tell your nephew to stay 3 times? And on top of that, you said something very strange to him after that. What happened? Could you explain? He said, yes. Harun and him have worked out a pact. He is going to tell Harun that I am starting a revolution. I am starting a revolt and that I must be taken care of. Harun will use the excuse and the testimony of him to move me towards Baghdad. And once I go to Baghdad, I will be in the prisons and I will not come back to Medina. They said, Yabna Rasulullah, you knew this? He said, of course. He said, then why? He says, look. He said, why did you give him the money? Why did you not punish him? Why did you not stop him? He said, listen, he has not committed the crime yet. And I cannot administer any punishment before the crime has been done, number one. And number two, I did my job. I did i'timam hujjah. I told him 3 times, think about it. Don't do it. I recommend you stay. He didn't listen. And the third level is we must not do qata rahim. I do not want to be in the line on the day of Yawm al-Qiyamah that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala asks me that why did you cut off the relations with the near ones? You see, my dear brothers and sisters, yes, this is an extreme example, but how many of us, over the smallest things, we begin to bicker and fight with our loved ones? Sometimes siblings fighting, sometimes husband and wife fighting, sometimes parents fighting with children, children fighting with parents. We must follow what the Imams taught us, to be patient, to be harmonious, live and build love and compassion in the families. You know, I know, and I don't want to say the place, I know 2 brothers from our community, Shia community, globally, I won't say the place. They were in a situation where they were fighting one another in courts, and the main person bringing the case against the other. Allahu Akbar. My dear brothers and sisters, build harmony, build compassion, because where there is qata rahim, the du'as are not accepted to the extent that they can be. Build those relationships in light of what the Ahlul Bayt have told us. This is the reason the Imam ended up in Baghdad from Medina. The works of this individual, Muhammad ibn Muslim, who till this day certain people follow. Nonetheless, we come to a moment in time where the Imam was tested again and again in the dungeons, in the prisons. 14 years at least he spent in prison, if not much more, according to the riwayat. There's a moment in time, this Imam, Harun, would always plot to try to get this Imam in a situation where he could compromise the principles of the Imam, or try to at least. For example, one day he paid an exorbitant amount, a very heavy amount of money to a lady who was known, and there's children here, she was there to tempt the Imam. He gives this money to this lady and she goes to the prison. When she goes to the prison, the dungeon, the zindan where the Imam is, he is in a state of worship. He is in a state of ibadah. At that point in time, when she comes in the middle of the night, they send her, they give her the money, they say, we want you to do this and go to this prison cell. When they send her and she gets there, the Imam is in a state of ibadah. The Imam is in a state of worship. She says, I heard this individual praying to the Lord. And when I heard him and I listened closely, I heard him say, thank you to Allah. I thank my Lord who allowed me to have this solitude and the solace to be able to worship you one-on-one with no one else there. Allahu Akbar. This key that the Imam has given is the solution for you and I to deal with COVID isolation that many people are dealing with. I get emails and calls wherever the Mu'mineen are, especially in this time, especially in places where there are lockdowns. People are having a difficult time. I remember there was a scholar that during the time of the revolution, before the revolution in Iran, there was a moment in time where this scholar had been imprisoned. When he had been imprisoned, a friend of his was trying to get him out. When he was trying to get him out, he says, this scholar says, get me out, I can't bear this environment anymore. This other scholar, his friend who was trying to get him out, he gave him a book, the Messenger of Rumi. Now, Rumi is not perfect, I don't know. I'm not the judge of this. Some people say it's good, some people it's bad. Nobody is perfect, and this, nonetheless, Rumi, as I remind you, he wrote a poem in honor of Ali ibn Abi Talib. What does he say? As Ali amuz ikhlas amal, learn from Ali the sincerity of action. He wrote this when in the Battle of Khandaq, Amir al-Mu'mineen had finished Amr ibn Abdul Wud al-Amiri. But remember, he stepped away and then Amr ibn Abdul Wud had spat and Imam stepped away. He says, learn from Ali the sincerity of action. Nonetheless, at that point in time, when the scholar read the book, 1 week later, his friend who gave him the book came back to the prison. He said, listen, I need some more time. I still can't get you out. I need some more time. He said, more time to get me out of prison? I don't want to leave prison. I said, why? He says, I realized that this is the best place for me to worship Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. The same way Imam al-Kadhim alayhi salam teaches us. The key to deal with this difficulty is to turn isolation into solitude, to turn isolation into a solace and connection to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala directly. That's the key. Remember Allah, and the Imam al-Kadhim teaches us this. 14 years in prison. This lady who was sent to tempt the Imam, you know, she began to pray out behind the Imam. When they came in the morning to open the cell, what did they see? This lady who they had paid in order to tempt the Imam, she was praying behind the Imam in a state of ibadah. They said, we've never seen you pray before. What is going on? And you're in this state? He said that I was so moved by the words and the ibadah and the worship of this man that until the end of my life, I will never try to do anything wrong, and I will worship the God and the Allah of this individual. Allahu Akbar. At that point in time, this is the movement of the Imam, the lesson that the Imam gives you and I so we can understand. But how difficult was the musibah of this Imam? How difficult was the tragedy of this Imam? How difficult was the adversity of this Imam? You know, a Shia from Medina wanted to visit the Imam when he was in prison, when he was in the Zindan. Imagine we know where Imam Sahib al-Zaman is. Do you know what would it feel like? We would want to meet the Imam, wouldn't we? He was knowing where his Imam is, and he was in Medina. He knows his Imam is in Baghdad, but he can't meet him because the environment was so strict. So he went from Medina towards Baghdad. You know, Baghdad, it was not an easy place to be at that time, given the circumstances. I'll explain in a moment. He comes towards Baghdad and he asks, because it's an era of heavy taqiyya, where people are hiding their belief system just to survive. Because all of these Abbasid rulers, they killed Shias left, right, and center. At that point in time, he asks one person, another, in a secret environment. He's able to find one Shia who works as a prison guard in the prison where Imam al-Kadhim is. He says, listen, I just want to meet the Imam. Can you please help me meet the Imam? He said, listen, if I help you meet the Imam, you will die and I will die. They'll kill you and they'll kill me. He said, listen, I just want to meet the Imam. Can you make it happen? He said, what's the point of me being without the Imam? He says, very well. Listen, if I bring you through the front door, of the dungeon, they'll kill me and they'll kill you. I cannot do this. He said, very well. What is the solution? He says, the only solution is if I take you through the ventilation system, where the vent is. There's one vent that opens into the Imam's prison dungeon and you can see through that. That's the only way. You can see the Imam and go, that's it. He says, very well. If that's the only thing that I can do, then that's what I will do. At that point in time, he takes him in the middle of the night through the ventilation system. When he takes him through the ventilation system, he says, look down. When they get to the vent, they see the vent. He says, look through the vent. When he looked through the vent, he was looking, the Shia from Medina is looking down at the ground. He says, I don't see anything. I only see a white cloth, a sheet that's on the ground. He said, that sheet that is on the ground, that is your Imam. That is Imam Al-Kazim alayhi salam. He says, how is it possible? He says that there is only one small dry piece of bread that comes for the Imam once a day, and a glass of warm hot water that comes. That is all the food that he has. He spends his days and nights in the ibadah of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. This was the circumstance. This was the environment in which the Imam was existing. Spend your days and nights analyzing and doing justice to this Imam. As I begin to draw to a conclusion, my dear brothers and sisters, Baghdad was a difficult environment, in particular for the Shias at that time. There were two worlds at that time. There were two tales. There were two environments. At the same time, two stories, one of wealth, one of poverty, one of opulence, one of the austerity. There was one of, for example, luxury. There was one of humbleness and humility. There were two worlds in Baghdad at the same time. What? One was the world of luxury and partying and riches and wine and alcohol, and one was the world of the worshippers such as Imam Al-Qaeda and the followers. What do I mean? There's a moment in time where we have riwayat that say, that are still found today, do not spend the night in Baghdad, especially for those who go to Ziyarah. You may not understand this until you understand the context. The ulama have explained. Why do you not spend the night in Baghdad? Is it because Baghdad has the blood of the shuhada that it was built on? For example, you know, in the olden times, they used to have walls around the building. They used to have walls around the city. The city would have walls around it. You know, the wall that was around Baghdad, there was ancient Baghdad and new Baghdad. New Baghdad was built by Mansur al-Dawaniqi, who killed the sixth Imam. This one built the new Baghdad, or what we call it. He built, of course, Mesopotamia is very old civilization. He built this wall. It was built with the blood of the Sadat. Do you know what they would do? They would drain the blood of a Sayyid Hassani in the cement instead of water. This is how the wall was built. This is how difficult the environment was for the Sadat. But at the same time, it was an environment where much mathematics, sciences, technology is coming. For our youth, I'll explain. Do you know that the first computer, according to our modern world, the first computer was built in Baghdad during this era? The Banu Musa brothers, they had a close connection to the Abbasid rulers. These Banu Musa brothers, they built the first computer. They were the individuals who, for example, they built a device that played itself, and it played the flute, you know, the flute. And it was the first hardware happening during the time of builds going on. But why did the riwayah say don't spend the night in Baghdad? The riwayah said don't spend the night in Baghdad, not because it was shuhada. Karbala is built on the blood of shuhada. It's blessed. The blood of the shuhada raises the level of the land. It was because Baghdad was a city at that time, and it was a city like no other. You see, in our modern world, whether it's New York or London or Paris, whatever it may be, when cities get established, ideas spread. In science, it's called the spillover effect. Ideas spread very rapidly in cities. But if you know the modern era, viruses also spread very quickly. Like COVID in London, in New York, and other places spreads very rapidly. Ideas also spread like this. Another thing that spreads very fast in a city is vices. Gunah, sin, masiyah, drugs, alcohol, gambling, X, Y, and Z. In cities, it thrives. This is what was going on in Baghdad. The reasons, according to the ulama, as to why it was said not to spend the night in Baghdad was based on what was going on in Baghdad at that time. At night, the worst things were happening. So what was happening? Imam Al-Kazim alayhi salam is in Baghdad and passing by a house. When he's passing by a house, there's a moment in time where he hears music playing from the house. There is a party going on in a very lavish mansion in Baghdad. At that point in time, when the Imam is passing by, when he's passing by, he sees the servant lady who is throwing out the garbage. When she is throwing out the garbage and disposing of it, the Imam is passing by and he stops and says, "This house, is it owned by a free man or a slave?" You said the owner of this house, who I work for, is the wealthiest man in Baghdad, or one of the wealthiest men in Baghdad. And you're asking that, is he a free man or a slave? He's the freest. The Imam looks back and says, it seems like it. Otherwise, he would not be acting in this way. And he walked away. When this lady went back towards the house, the owner, Bishr, he says, what took you so long? Why did it take you so long? He says, she said, look, I was throwing out the garbage, but I saw a man and he asked me a strange question. So what's the question he asked? He asked, is the owner of this home a free man or a slave? What did you say? Said, of course, I said it's a free man. He's the freest. He's one of the wealthiest. He's having one of the most lavish parties, and you're asking if he's a slave or free? So what did he say to that? The man said something strange. He said, it seems like it. Otherwise, you would not be acting like this. At that point in time, Bishr ran after the Imam in a way that they called him Bishr al-Afi, meaning the one who did not have shoes, barefoot, Bishr. He went after the Imam because the words hit him like a thunderbolt. That the Imam had said, he said, please explain this line. He was moved by this line. In fact, he became one of the Urafa afterwards, they say. Nonetheless, I won't talk about it too much. I don't have time. I'm racing against the clock. What happened at that point in time? The Imam said that if he was a slave of Allah, a servant of Allah, he would not be acting in this way where he has become a servant to his desires. Now I want to stop here. What is the connection between Imam al-Kadhim and Imam al-Hussein? The question I asked at the beginning. Pay close attention here. Imam Aba Abdullah al-Hussein Sayyid al-Shuhada is on the plains of Karbala. There was a moment in time where he's in his final moments, his last breaths, and the enemy doesn't know if he's alive or dead. At that point in time, Ibn Ziyad calls out, at that point in time, Umar ibn Sa'ad, he says, look, Hussein is in his final moments. Is he dead or is he alive? He says, I know how to tell. I want you to take the enemy, the horsemen, and the men to go and loot the tents of the women and children. Loot the tents. At that point in time, when they gave this order, the body Imam Hussein cried out. He was alive in his final moments. And he says, In lam yakun deen, wala takhafun al-ma'ad, fakunu ahraran fi dunyakum. Allahu Akbar. What statement did my Imam make? What statement did your Imam make? He said, if you have no religion, in lam yakun deen, وَلَا تَخَافُونَ الْمَعَادِ, if you have no religion and you have no fear of the hereafter, of the day of accountability, فَكُونُوا أَحْرَارًا فِي دُنْيَاكُمْ, at least be free in this dunya. Allahu Akbar. Imam al-Hussein, Sayyid al-Shuhada, Ibn Az-Zahra, one question for you with my hands together. Those people who you are saying this to, they have the women, they have the money, they have the power, they have the respect, they have the prestige, they have the horses, they have everything, the weaponry, and you're saying they're not free? Allahu Akbar. What's going on here? The Imam would respond perhaps that exactly, they think they are free, yet they are the greatest slaves. Allahu Akbar. That is why Imam al-Hussein is called Abul Ahrar, Ya Abul Ahrar, oh, the father of those who are free. Because of freedom is Imam al-Hussein, and Imam al-Hussein is freedom. But remember, the mission and the movement of Imam al-Hussein and the movement of his grandson Imam al-Kadhim is absolutely aligned. The same thing that Imam al-Kadhim did, if Imam Hussein was in his place, Imam Hussein would do. And if Imam al-Kadhim was in the place of Imam al-Hussein, he would do the exact same thing. The only thing is that the opposition of Imam al-Kadhim was silent, but it was still opposition. And the opposition of Imam Hussein was apparent, yet they were aligned. Imam al-Kadhim told Bishr, be a servant of Allah and you will be free. And Imam Hussein said, be someone who is free by being free of your desires. The exact same message. You and I, we all have these things that shackle us, whether it is wealth, whether it is materialism, whether it is anger. Everyone has something that keeps them chained, but we must follow the Imam who teaches us وَالْكَاظِمِينَ الْغَيْظَ, and they control their anger. Or the one who is Abul Ahrar, Sayyid al-Shuhada, Ibn Az-Zahra. Tonight we also commemorate the night of the movement of the safar of Imam Hussein, the travel of Imam Al-Hussein, leaving Medina and to go towards Karbala, his ultimate destiny. There's a moment in time where Imam is praying in Masjid al-Nabi towards the evening. When he is praying in Masjid al-Nabi, there's a messenger who comes and he says, the Hakim, the ruler of the city of Medina, has called on you. The Imam says, very well, I will come, don't worry, but I'll come on my time. At that moment, when the Imam got this notification, he goes to his home and he gets all of the youth of Banu Hashim. 18 Banu Hashim went to Karbala, but there were others at this time. Muslim ibn Aqil and others, there were about 21 or so of the youth of Hashim. He gathered them all. He says, I have been summoned to the palace of the ruler. And at this point in time, I want you to come with me alone. Do not come inside. At that point in time, Abbas is there, Ali Akbar is there, or Qasim is there. The youth are there, Aun and Muhammad. They all gather together. They escort Imam Al-Hussein alayhi salam to the governor's palace. When they get to the governor's palace, Imam Hussein says, stay here, wait here. He goes, he enters. When he enters, at that point in time, they say, Salaamu alaykum wa alaykum as-salam. At that point in time, the Wali of Medina, he says, listen, the situation is such that the ruler, Yazid, has sent a bay'atnama. He wants you to write and sign this. And he wants you to write and sign this to pay your allegiance to the ruler of Sham, that is Yazid. Of course, Yazid's father Muawiyah had signed an agreement with Imam Hassan that this should not happen. Imam Al-Hussein alayhi salam, he says, why do you want to do this in the middle of the night? Why not do it in the morning when everyone else is there? We'll do it in front of, you want to do it in front of everyone? Do it in front of everyone. Why are you doing this in the middle of the night? At that point in time, he said, very well. Imam Al-Hussein alayhi salam, he turns around, going towards the exit to leave. When at that point in time, Marwan is there. Marwan says, if you leave Hussein at this time, you will never get to him. You will have to drain much blood in order to get him again. Cut his head off. At that point in time, Imam turns around. He hears what he said. He turns around, and in a state of anger, the Imam alayhi salam, controlled anger, he says, you have the audacity to say this to me, O son of the indecent woman. The Imam saying a historical fact about him. At that point, as soon as the Imam said this, the 21 youth of Banu Hashim, they entered into the building. And the Riwayah says the first one, Sahib Manaqib says, the first two to draw their swords were Abu al-Fadl al-Abbas and Aliun al-Akbar. Allahu Akbar, ajrukum ala Allah. It is perhaps that was why Imam Al-Hussein on the plains of Karbala, when he looked left and right, he called out in his final moments, oh my lions, where are you? Oh Abbas, where are you? Oh Ali Akbar, where are you? On the 28th of Rajab, you were there to help me. Where are you to help me now? Ajrukum ala Allah. They say that they all escorted Imam Al-Hussein alayhi salam, and they gathered around him and formed the entourage, and they helped him go back. When they helped him go back, at that point in time, Imam knew his destiny. At that point in time, he goes towards the grave of Imam goes towards the grave of his blessed grandfather. When he goes in the middle of the night to Masjid al-Nabi, he puts his hand on the grave of his grandfather and he looks towards the skies and he says to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, هَذَا قَبْرُ نَبِيِّكَ وَنَبْنُ بِنْتِ نَبِيِّكَ, and this is the grave of your messenger, O my Lord, and I am the grandson of this messenger. I am the son of the daughter of this messenger. At that point in time, he said, my dear grandfather, take me into the grave. Take me into the grave with you. I want to be with you. At that point in time, Allah knows what he said. Then he got up and he went towards the grave of his mother, Fatima Az-Zahra. Allah knows what went through the heart of Hussein. He is leaving the grave of his mother, Fatima Az-Zahra, for the final time. This is Medina where he grew up. Ajrukum ala Allah. When the day broke, there's a moment in time where he meets Salama, the wife of Rasulullah, and at that point in time, she says, my grandson, my child, where are you going? He says, I am going towards Iraq. At that point in time, she said, why are you going towards Iraq? Don't go towards Iraq, because I have heard from your grandfather Rasulullah that my Hussein will be killed in Iraq. He said that, oh my dear grandmother, he says that you know what Allah has destined must happen, therefore I must go. Ajrukum ala Allah. The Imam calls for all of the camels, all of the rides to come and be in a line, one after the other. He calls for the women to come and he helps them. Abbas helps, Ali Akbar helps. They help get the women onto the caravan. They're assembling the caravan. There's a moment in time. There is one moment where there is a daughter, a Fatima al-Alila, Fatima al-Sughra. She is saying that, am I going to go with you, Baba? Imam Hussein says, my daughter, you remind me so much of my mother. You are to stay here. She says, my Baba, if you are going to go, at least give me my little brother, who's only a few weeks old at this time. Ali and Al-Azhar, Abdullah Radiya, he had only been born for a few weeks. May Allah protect your children. Abdullah Radiya, Ali Asghar was in the hands of Bibi Fatima Sughra. At that moment, she would not leave her. At that point, no one could get this baby out of the hands of Fatima Sughra. Imam Al-Hussein whispered something into the ear of the child. The child came into the hands of Imam Al-Hussein. But this broke the heart of Sughra. Who was this Imam Al-Hussein? Who he had to bid farewell to two of his daughters in the most difficult ways. One was Fatima Sughra in the final moments in Medina, and one was a 4-year-old Sakina on the day of Ashura. Allah, I ask you about the heart of Sayyid al-Shuhada. ألا لعنة الله على القوم الظالمين وسيعلم الذين ظلموا أي منقلب ينقلبون إنا لله وإنا إليه راجعون. Ya Allah, we ask you to bless this holy gathering. Ya Allah, we ask you to learn from the environment of Imam al-Kadhim alayhi salam and Imam al-Hussein alayhi salam. Ya Allah, we ask you by Bab al-Hawaij, Imam Musa ibn Ja'far al-Kadhim, anyone who is suffering an illness, you have told us to ask by Bab al-Hawaij, especially those who have eye ailments, sickness. Imam al-Shafi'i says, ask by Bab al-Hawaij. Imam al-Kadhim, and your du'as will be accepted by Bab al-Hawaij. Anyone who is unwell, who is not doing well, COVID or otherwise, Ya Allah, grant them shifa this night by Bab al-Hawaij. Ya Allah, by Bab al-Hawaij, anyone who has financial difficulty, grant them deliverance and alleviation from their financial difficulty. Ya Allah, allow our next generation to be better Muslims than us. Ya Allah, allow us to learn from the seerah of the Imams, especially Imam al-Kadhim, Imam al-Hussein alayhi salam. Ya Allah, allow us to be attached to Karbala and Imam al-Hussein forever and the message of all the Imams. Ya Allah, hasten the reappearance of Imam Sahib al-Asr wa-Zaman and allow us to be amongst his companions when he returns. وآخر دعوانا الحمد لله رب العالمين. معتم يا حسين يا حسين يا حسين
Ya Hussein, Ya Hussein, Ya Hussein, Ya Hussein. दिल है बेचैन शाह हुदा का, दिल है बेचैन शाह हुदा का, हो रहा है सफर करबला का, क़स्द है वहाँ से मुल्क के बका का, क़स्द है वहाँ से मुल्क के बका का, हो रहा है सफर करबला का, जमा गिर्द है अहले मदीना, चाक है गम से हर एक का सीना, जमा गिर्द है अहले मदीना, चाक है गम से हर एक का सीना, शाह देते हैं सब को दिलासा, शाह देते हैं सब को दिलासा, हो रहा है सफर करबला का, सबसे रो रो के कहते हैं हजरत, अब यही है खुदा की मशीयत। सबसे रो रो के कहते हैं हजरत, अब यही है खुदा की मशीयत। मुझसे छूटता है ना का रोजा, मुझसे छूटता है ना का रोजा। हो रहा है सफर करबला का, भाई अब्बासो मशकों वाले, आओ पानी तुम्हारे हवाले। भाई अब्बासो मशकों वाले, आओ पानी तुम्हारे हवाले। सात मासूम बच्चों का होगा, साथ मासूम बच्चों का होगा। हो रहा है सफर करबला का, जाके सुगरा को समझाओ भाई, कर दो बीमारे गम की रिहाई। जाके सुगरा को समझाओ भाई, कर दो बीमारे गम की रिहाई। साथ चलना है दुश्वार उसका, साथ चलना है दुश्वार उसका। हो रहा है सफर करबला का, कहियो बेटी तुझे क्या खबर है, रास्ता हर कदम पुरखतर है। कहियो बेटी तुझे क्या खबर है, रास्ता हर कदम पुरखतर है। सामना अब है दस्ते बला का, सामना अब है दस्ते बला का। हो रहा है सफर करबला का, आज है बीबियों को हमारी शान से जा रही है सवारी। आज है बीबियों को हमारी शान से जा रही है सवारी। कल कहाँ होगा इनका ये पर्दा, कल कहाँ होगा इनका ये पर्दा। हो रहा है सफर करबला का, काफिले के हैं हम राह ज़हरा, कब्र में कैसे रहती है दुखिया। काफिले के हैं हम राह ज़हरा, कब्र में कैसे रहती है दुखिया। गम से टुकड़े है इसका कलेजा, गम से टुकड़े है इसका कलेजा। हो रहा है सफर करबला का, दिल है बेचैन शाह के खुदा का। हो रहा है सफर करबला का। या हुसैन,
हुसैन ज़ियारत पढ़ा।
अस्सलामु अलैका या अबा अब्दुल्लाह, अस्सलामु अलैका या इब्न रसूलिल्लाह, अस्सलामु अलैका या इब्न अमीरुल मुमिनीन व इब्न सय्यदिल वसीय्यीन, अस्सलामु अलैका या इब्न फातिमा अज़-ज़हरा सय्यदतुन निसाइल आलमीन, अस्सलामु अलैकुम साइरी शुहदाए करबला, खुसूसन सय्यदी मौला या अबुल फज़ल अब्बास या इब्न अमीरुल मुमिनीन, अस्सलामु अलैकुम व रहमतुल्लाहि व बरकातुहू, अस्सलामु अलैका या गरीबल गुरबा, अस्सलामु अलैका या मुइनुल दुअफ़ा'i वल फ़ुक़रा, अस्सलामु अलैका या सुल्तान या अबुल हसन या अली इब्न मूसा अय्युहर रिज़ा, अस्सलामु अलैकुम व रहमतुल्लाहि व बरकातुहू, अस्सलामु अलैका या साहिबल अस्र वज़ ज़मान, अस्सलामु अलैका या शरीकल कुरआन, अस्सलामु अलैका या इमामल इंस वल जान, عجل الله تعالى فرجك وسهل الله تعالى مخرجك وزهورك. السلام عليك وعلى آبائك الطيبين الطاهرين. السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته. صلوات. اللهم صل على محمد وعلى.
Thank you, Brother Kirmani. Thank you, brothers and sisters. Inshallah. See you next Tuesday at Dua Tawassul. Khuda Hafiz.